Hello everyone, welcome to a Palettes I Wish Existed video. I was inspired to do this one after watching Angelica Nyqvist. She did a video on if she had a fall makeup collection, what it would be composed of, and I was very inspired by that. I've done a few of these before, focusing on different brands. I've done 4. I did Urban Decay, Anastasia Beverly Hills, Kat Von D, and Too Faced. I will have those linked down below in case you are interested in seeing my mock-ups for that. But in this case, these are mock-ups for what I would do if I was completely in charge. So I had a lot of people request something like this in my last video, and I believe actually the one before that as well. People were like, well, but what would you do? Not just thinking within the confines of a brand's aesthetic, but what would you do if you could do whatever you wanted? And I was like, I really don't know. What would I do? And I was kind of thinking about things here and there, and then I just kind of lost a little bit of my inspiration. But watching Angelica's video, thinking about fall makeup, specifically eyeshadow, because this is all eyeshadow, really got me excited to think, you know, what would I ideally want? So I came up with 2 larger palettes and 3 smaller palettes, sort of like companion palettes. But in my dream hypothetical world, everything would be available as a single as well. Things would be sort of customizable, but you could buy everything pre-assembled. So before I get any further, I just want to say that this is makeup fan fiction. This is makeup fan art. I'm doing this entirely for fun and because it's an exercise in creativity. I've said this before in my other videos. This is just something that I really enjoy doing, coming up with sort of backstories for palettes, thinking sort of outside the box, thinking what I would like to see exist that I don't feel like exists the way that I would want it 100% perfectly. And for me, my inspiration would be heavily based on music and nature. So that would be reflected in whatever I would do personally. So anyway, just a disclaimer, doesn't exist. This is purely just for fun, and I hope some of these color stories and ideas might inspire you in some way to look at your collection differently. That's the biggest reward I've gotten out of doing this series, is just hearing from other people about how they rearrange their single shadows in a different way, how they were inspired to think of different color combinations. That's really what I want to bring forward from stuff like this. It's a lot of fun, and I love makeup. So, all right, with that out of the way, as I said, I would have pre-assembled palettes, but I would have things available as singles. So I would have first a 15 pan palette, and I'll show it in a second. I just want to explain like what I would have packaging like. So I would have packaging sort of similar to this Morphe palette, because for me, I would love to have a mirror. So this is a palette that has 15 eyeshadows, so it would be sort of like this size, and it would have a little bit of a weight to it because of the mirror. I'm just somebody who always applies makeup with a mirror, and I notice that I don't use my eyeshadows as much if they don't have a mirror, and I think that's why I don't use my singles a lot. But ideally, I would have a little insert inside like they have for the MAC palettes, the customizable MAC ones, which is actually the layout I use to make my mock-up, but it would be removable. So you would have like the eyeshadows already in there, you would have the names on there, but you could pop the insert out and the shadows if you wanted, and you could just use this sort of like a Z palette. That would be my preferred layout for an eyeshadow palette. That's just what I like using, because mirror, decent size, you know, it's not too bulky, it's not super long. I don't really like the really long palettes because I feel like it's hard to handle. And I'm just a person who loves to hold her eyeshadow. So I would also love to have some sort of design on the cover of the palette. I would love to hire an artist who painted in the Hudson River School sort of style and use the exact same colors of the pre-assembled shadows and have a couple of different palette options that would kind of be like limited edition. So you would have that sort of, you know, nature landscape design on the palette, but then you could still use the palette inside for whatever you wanted. So that's the backstory between what I would want. So for my first full-size eyeshadow palette, this is the most stereotypical fall assortment possible. Yes, there are similarities to subculture. I know somebody's gonna say that. Subculture is a very fall palette to me, and actually the palette I used entirely on my eyes today because I was feeling the greens. I was sort of channeling a little bit of fall in July. It's early, I know, but fall is my favorite season too. I'm that girl. So anyway, this would be my Free Fallin' palette, and I really wanted it to scream fall. I really wanted this color story, as soon as you looked at it, to go, ah, fall. I wanted to just scream at you. That was what the goal I was going for with this palette. So there are 15 shades, 5 of them are metallics and 10 of them are mattes. That's just what I was feeling when I designed these palettes. So the first shade, which looks a little white with a bit of yellow, is what I would want to be sort of like the highlight shade. I would want it to have a similar quality to the Clionadh Cosmetics highlighter eyeshadow in Circuit, which has this like yellow gold reflect to it, but it has a transparent base. I would want the same sort of effect with this. I would want it to have a transparent base instead of a white base because that would mean it'd be more versatile for more skin tones. And I just like the way that it reflects the different shadows. Like, I actually used the Clionadh one on my inner corner and my brow bone today, and it just has this really pretty reflect that pairs so well with so many different shadows, and it brings something different every time. Plus you could layer it on top of other shadows for a different effect. A matte navy, a really metallic yellow gold, a matte mustard, a matte muted pink, a matte sage green, matte beige, matte orange, of course, a matte gray, but a little bit more of a warmer toned gray, a very, very metallic orangey yellow, which is what I've been craving so much recently. I don't have anything like this, and I keep trying to find something with what I have. I don't have anything that really gives me that yellow orange. Like, I have the fiery sun on my eyelid. That's what I would want this to be. A metallic pale green, a matte forest green, a matte burgundy wine shade, a metallic olive, and a hot orange. So again, very typical of fall. If you look at a fall landscape photo, you are going to see all of these colors reflected in there, and that's where I pulled my inspiration from. I just really love looking at the changing colors of the leaves, especially when you have like mountains in the background. It's just so inspiring to me. It definitely is a little chaotic, but I almost wanted it to seem like you were looking at a painting and where you would pull inspiration from. You compare the greens with the yellows and the oranges and the yellows. You can do sort of the sunset thing. You can do a really deep, dark green smoky eye. You could just do yellow all over the lid. You could just do a deep blue smoky eye. I just feel like there would be a lot of options within this palette, but then everything would be available as a single. So if you're like, you know what, I only really want that one, you could get that one as well. Now, I would also have 2 mini 9-pan pre-assembled palettes that would pair with the first one, with Free Fallin'. The first one is what I'm calling September When It Comes. This is the quintessential fall matte eyeshadow collection. I'm sure as soon as you look at it, you will have seen a lot of things similar to this, but I feel like people still really gravitate towards these sort of shades, and I just want to make them available. These are all mattes and they're all different from the other palette as well. Nothing overlaps. So you have a sunshiny yellow, a yellow cream, a deep red, a yellow brown. Everything sort of has like yellow undertones in it. Another mustard shade. This one's a little bit richer than the one that was in the other palette. A medium warm brown, a pale cream, a burnt orange, and a deep warm brown. This is a very typical fall color story. One of my favorite things to do is yellow into orange into brown. It just is such an easy way to look like fall. And this just has some good transition shades, some pops of color. You could totally just create looks out of this palette alone, or you could pair it with the Free Fallin' palette to create even more looks. The second mini palette is what I'm calling Season of the Witch, and this is entirely different shades of green because I really want more green matte single shadows to exist in general, and if something like this existed in this form that was a little bit customizable, I would be buying it in a heartbeat. I've just been all over greens and they're so hard to find. So again, this is all matte and it's just various shades of green. Some of them are very close, but I wanted to have some options, so things that were just, you know, a hair different, just a couple of notches lighter or darker than something else. So I feel like a lot of these sort of types of greens don't really exist right now, at least not that I've found, or not that I've found affordably. So I would also want, of course, I think everybody's sort of dream would be to have the affordable but good quality makeup. That's what I would want to have. So dreamy, 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 lots of green. And of course I had to call it Season of the Witch. I listened to that song non-stop like the entire month of October. It's a song from Donovan. Highly recommend it. It's so good. And this just, it's such a swamp witchy kind of pre-assembled palette. It would make my life to have this actually exist. My second full-size pre-assembled palette would be called Late for the Sky. This is a cooler toned palette, lots of purples and pinks in a variety of finishes. So in this case, I would have 3 mattes and the rest would be either satins, shimmers, or metallics, you know, a couple glitters. I just really like the idea of having a wide variety of pinks and purples available in one palette, and then I threw in a couple of silvers and grays just because I feel like they balance each other really well. I just really like the way that cool purples and pinks and silvers look together, and grays too, but I just really wasn't feeling like a gray palette. So this one, again, I have a couple of like sort of fancy ideas for shadows. I'd really want a light, bright silver. I just really like the lightest silver possible, but then I like different shades of silver because sometimes I want something that's really dark, almost gunmetal, but sometimes I want something that's very, very light. And then I would like to have another one of those highlight shadows that would be blue, reflecting a little purple pink, just having that little shift going, and then having a purple with a slight blue green duochrome. I think that would be very pretty. You know, a matte cool pink, another sparkly silver, and a couple of sparkly pinks just in different shades, and then a whole whack of metallic purples just in a wide variety of tones. I just want a lot of purple, and then another matte purple, like a lilac color, and a deep purple, because I feel like you do need a little bit of contrast. You could use it as a liner, you could just use it to deepen the outer corner, but I feel like you would still need something a little bit deeper, and then I feel like a lot of people would have something like a black, so they could use that, and if they wanted to customize the palette, obviously they could take one out and put in a black or put in whatever else that would make it more functional for them if they wanted to, but this is how I would want to sell Late for the Sky, just like this. And then I would have the Wild Heart collection, which was inspired by the Stevie Nicks album cover. That is just one of my go-to fall music albums. I know there's a couple references to the season in the album, but just besides that, there's something about the way that it sounds that makes me think of the autumn time, and this is another color scheme that I feel like we're not seeing a whole lot of. We're seeing more purples come out more and more, but I would love to see something like this be available at the fall time, just in various purple and pink hues. I feel like it would complement the Late for the Sky palette, but you could also, again, create matte eye looks with this, or just use these with other things you already have. You can use them as crease shades, you could use it as liner shades, some of the darker ones like the darker purple and the darker brown with like some purple undertones. I'm just really into playing with different color schemes, and this one just really spoke to me and makes me want to play around with more purples and pinks. Also why I think I've been so drawn to the few things that have been releasing lately. I'm so drawn to the purples and the pinks, and I'm just trying to think of all these different ways that I can use them, and I can just imagine doing like an all matte soft purple eye and doing something more dramatic, and then adding glitter and adding some of these like other metallic glittery shades. It's such a dream, and I would love to make my custom palettes exist sometime. Not like saying that I'm gonna make them, but like by buying them. I want to find these. I'm sure they exist somewhere, somehow. There's so many brands out now that realistically I'm sure I could probably comb the ends of the earth and find all of these shades or close or close variations thereof. So I would love to have something like this. I need to find more purples, and I'm hoping that more of these indie brands that have single shadows will release some like this, because I just want them all. But I know it's also very expensive. I don't have a very large single shadow collection for that reason, because I find it really adds up quickly. So that's why I like the option of buying things in a bundle or buying it individually. So it kind of gives everyone an option. If they wanted to buy something, they don't have to buy everything. They could just buy one thing. And that's what I like about some of these indie brands that exist right now. So anyway, that is everything for the palettes I wish existed. I hope my dreams turn into predictions and we see more of these color schemes when fall approaches. I would just love to have more things that look like fall and more purples and pinks in a wide variety of finishes instead of like the same sort of like warm purples. I'd love to see some cooler purples. I'd love to see some unique pink shadows. I'd love to see some varieties in silvers and grays, and then of course like greens, please, more greens. It's just, you know, the wishful thinking, but hey, you never know, and this is just fun as well. And I don't have any unrealistic expectations here. This is 100% for fun. This is the closest I'm ever going to get to designing an eyeshadow palette, let's be real, but it's just fun to play makeup designer. So that's just what I was doing here, and I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you maybe were inspired a little bit to look at some of the shadows you already have in a different way, or maybe you're inspired to try something new, which would also be fun. Let me know what you would love to see for the fall time. I know oranges and yellows and browns are groundbreaking, but I would love to hear from you. What would you create? If you were given the reins to do whatever you wanted for fall eyeshadow, what would you do? And what do you hope happens? What do you hope already established brands will come out with in the fall time? Do you hope for more greens? Do you want more warm tones? Do you hope for some cool toned palettes? Let me know. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope we get a chance to chat soon. Bye for now.